Welcome to the Bilingual Montessori webinar series. Hello, I'm Amy with Bilingual Montessori. We are here to support you in building stronger bilingual programs. This series has been made possible through Erasmus Plus funding by the European Union. Thanks for tuning into this webinar about English as a second language in the early years. You will get to see some beautiful photos of a classroom in Spain and learn some tips and adaptations to incorporate into a 3 to 6-year-old environment that can balance the Montessori principles with bilingual learning. Denise Fernandez is with us today to talk about how the classroom routine and the 3 to 6-year-old environment can support children learning a second language. She's a passionate 3 to 6 Montessori guide with classroom experience spanning over 17 years. She has worked in different Montessori Children's House environments across many different international schools in Brazil and several European countries. Currently, she's happy to be a part of the vibrant community at Montessori Cordoba International School, which is nestled in the beautiful region of southern Spain. In her classroom in Spain, Denise skillfully fosters the growth and development of 24 children. She's been in her current beautiful classroom for 7 years. In this webinar, she will speak about how she manages English as a second language by sharing her many practical tips and adaptations. Now I'll turn it over to Denise.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this webinar. I'm very excited to be sharing with you all my tips and some adaptations and some strategies that I have developed over the years as a Montessori guide in international schools. So as Amy mentioned, I've been a children's house guide for over 17 years now. And I was lucky enough to work in international school for all these years. I just love working in international schools. I think it's such a dynamic environment. Children from different parts of the world, parents from different parts of the world, all blending in together and sharing our cultures. I just think they're so lucky. I wish I had had that opportunity as a child to be part of a community like that. So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I want children to have access to this, and I get to experience that with them as well as an adult. So I'm lucky as well. So today I would like to share with you some of the strategies that I developed. The title of this webinar is Practical Tips and Adaptations to Routine and Environment to Support Engaging 3 to 6-year-olds in a second language environment. So the structure of this webinar will be, first, I will talk about my specific school and our reality. And what surrounds us, the community we have, because that might be similar in many cases as well for you. I would also like to talk about some of the challenges I've encountered throughout my work experience, working in a Montessori school that's also an international environment, and how to support children who are learning in a second language. So I have to make some adaptations. I've developed some strategies, and I would like to share some of these practical tips with you. First, I would like to introduce Cordoba, which is a beautiful city in south of Spain. We currently have 325,000 people living in Cordoba. And our school is located in a beautiful area in the city. This is my classroom. I'm very lucky to be working there. We're located in the middle of the mountains. As you can see, it's got a lot of natural light and beautifully furnished. Oof, I'll go back. I'll go back to slide 1. Should I? So this is my classroom. As you can see, it's located in the middle of the mountains in Cordoba. It's got a lot of natural light. I love how the windows are made of glass, and so parents can see us. We can see the outside environment. I'm very lucky to work there. Our school, I would like to share with you some specific facts about our school. Right now, we have 120 students. We offer Montessori education to children between 0 and 12. So we have one infant community class, 2 children's houses, one elementary, 1 environment, and 1 elementary, 2 environments. One very specific thing about our school is that parents usually come to our school because of our English immersion program. We have many bilingual schools here in Cordoba, but only a handful of them really offer an immersion program like we do. So many parents, they come to our school first because they want their children to learn English from the early stages of life. And then they get to know about Montessori, and obviously they fall in love with this beautiful method. But this is something very specific about our school, is that not all the parents, but many of them come to our school because of the immersion program. So the language model that we follow is fully immersion in English. So we have, since children start in infant community, both guide and assistant speak to them only in English. The same thing in children's house. So when they move up to elementary, they start having Spanish lessons as required by Spanish law. So I would say they have maybe 10% of their lessons in Spanish, the Spanish language and culture. That's usually taught by the assistant, because in our school, usually the assistant is as a native speaker of Spanish. But everything else is done in English, and both guide and assistant communicate with children in English only. And now I would like to share with you some of the challenges we've encountered in our school and in other schools as well. One big challenge is that 90% of our students are Spanish, and they speak Spanish as their first language. That's a challenge because in other international schools I worked before, we had children coming from different countries. So in the same classroom, we would have a child that was Danish, another one that was German, another one that's Spanish, another one that was Brazilian, another one that was British. And then they would have to find a common language to communicate between themselves. And that helps them develop their level of English faster. In our case, that doesn't happen because 90% of them already speak Spanish, and they can communicate really well in Spanish. So it's easier for them just to keep talking to each other in Spanish. They don't feel this need to find another common language to speak between themselves. So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge that we have is that specifically here, I think in whole Spain, but specifically here in Andalusia, people are not very open to English. That means that even though English is mandatory in schools and people are required to have the minimum of a B1 level to start university, the level of English of people here in Andalusia is really low. And also there's a big resistance to anything in English. So for example, they only watch movies and series only dubbed. It's really hard to go to the movies and find something that's not dubbed. I think they play original audios only once a week on a Tuesday morning, for example, because there's really no one who wants to watch anything in the original version. And one interesting thing is that parents, sometimes I talk to parents during the conferences, And I advise them to let their children, if they watch TV, to let their children watch it in English instead of Spanish. Most cartoons are made in either America or in England, so their original sound is already in English. But it's funny how I see the reaction of the parents. Sometimes they are like, oh no, but I feel really sorry to make my child watch something in English, because if I am watching something on TV, I want to relax and I want to enjoy. And I want my child to do the same. I don't want them to be working and trying to understand in English as if it was something really bad. So this is the kind of reaction we have from parents. Sometimes we've had to make some adaptations in the school. I used to run my parents' meetings in English, but I noticed that parents didn't really understand what I was saying. They would be just nodding and smiling, but I had the impression that they weren't really following what I was saying in the meetings. So that kind of rushed me to learn Spanish faster, so that I could run my parents' meetings in Spanish. Also, communications in school are both done in both Spanish and English. And I noticed once we started doing that, parents started responding well to our emails. So yeah, whenever they see something that's written in English, they freeze for a while. And I think that kind of influences the way children see English in school. Another challenge that's also one characteristic of Montessori, but it can be challenging from the point of view of teaching children in a second language, is that in Montessori, we usually do individual lessons with the children. That means that I'll sit down, especially in the 3 to 6 environment. So I'll sit down with a child for a while, and during this time I'm sitting with them, they have my undivided attention, which is really good, and children feel really special when you're doing that. But at the same time, because we have so many children in the classroom, we have to give lots of presentations throughout the day. So we end up spending 10, 20 minutes with the child, but then we have to move on and talk to other children. And considering that we are the only link that they have to English really in the school, maybe those 10, 20 minutes is not enough input of English in their daily routine. So that's one of the challenges that we have in Montessori. Another challenge that I've encountered teaching English in Montessori international environments is that sometimes children get to the point when they are ready for reading and writing. They've been practicing with their letter sounds for a while. They have already mastered their letter sounds, and they are at the point that they start trying to read things and decode words. So they're ready to work with the movable alphabet, for example. But if they don't have a high enough level of English to be able to sit down in front of the mat and brainstorm words and build them, they don't really care about that material. And the same thing goes for reading. So when it gets to the point when they can read and they can sound out the words and blend the sounds together and decode a word, if they go through all this process and at the end they decoded the word pin and they don't know what a pin is, it can be really frustrating for them. And they just lose interest in the material, and they never go back to the material again. And that's obviously not something that we want in Montessori. We want children to keep interested, to keep going back to the materials, to keep practicing. And now I would like to talk a little bit about some of the adaptations and the strategies that I've created and I've been following and implementing in my class. Some things I just copied from other experienced teachers, and some things I developed myself. The first strategy would be the adaptation weeks. That's actually something that I saw in one of Karen Pierce's courses, how to start a Montessori classroom. And I thought it was very interesting because she shares strategies on how to start the year in the smoother way possible. Because sometimes we have new children in our classroom, and we have children coming from the summer where they spent 2 months going to the swimming pool every day, waking up really late, going to bed really late, especially here in Spain. So coming back to school and the routine can be a little bit difficult for them. And some of the young children still don't have the stamina and the concentration to keep working throughout the whole 3-hour work cycle. So we introduced the 3-hour work cycle bit by bit. So one of the things that we do in our school is staggered start days for children. So if you have 8 new children starting in our class that year, I will have one child start on Monday, another child start on Tuesday, another one on Wednesday, and so on until we finish with all the new children. I think that helps a lot in terms of organizing a routine, but I also noticed that it helped a lot with their level of English, because sometimes they start in children's house, they don't have any level of English yet if they're not coming from the infant community, for example. And they're kind of lost. And if a child is lost and not secure, they will not want to bond with the environment and with us. So, and during that day, their first day in the school, I spend the whole day with them. So I show them where the bathroom is, where to change their shoes, where to have a snack, how to drink water if they want to. And while I'm showing them these things, I'm giving them all this key vocabulary. So I'll say, oh, let's wash our hands. And then I do the gesture so they understand what I'm talking about. But I try to use it many times throughout the day so that they can start absorbing this vocabulary. Another thing that we do during this adaptation week is to alternate between individual work periods and group periods, because as I mentioned before, they still don't have the concentration to stay working for 3 hours. So I start the day with a big group. We do songs, we do instructions, maybe grace and courtesy lessons, and then we move on to a short period of individual work. And then we do another group, maybe a small group lesson with the younger ones, if you see that the older ones are working, and then another period of individual work. That works really well, especially for second language learners, because during these group activities, we do a lot of activities with vocabulary. We teach them the key vocabulary that we want them to learn for the rest of the year. So it's a little bit more of interaction between the guide or the assistant and the children in English. Another thing that I do during these first 6 weeks is I give them important instructions in Spanish. I avoid at all costs speaking Spanish to the children, but during these 6 weeks, I allow myself to speak to them in Spanish if necessary, because for me, it's very important that they feel safe and that they bond with me and they know what's going on. If they don't, it will take them longer to be part of the group. And if they're not part of the group, they kind of disconnect from the English environment around them. So if it's something really crucial for their routine, for their understanding of how things work, I will do it sometimes in Spanish. And after adaptation weeks are finished, I never speak Spanish to them again. And another thing that we do during this time is overemphasize key vocabulary. So as I mentioned before, these key things that are important to our routine, I use this vocabulary a lot. using gestures, enunciating each word very clearly. I just want them to start absorbing these words, and because they're very important for their routine. And also we play games with key vocabulary. So for example, if my assistant is doing a small group game, vocabulary game with the children, she will ask them, for example, would you go and stand next to the shoe rack? And then the children will go and stand up next to the shoe rack and come back. Oh, can you go and stand next to where we wash our hands? And they will go and do that. And with this repetition of vocabulary, they end up learning vocabulary a lot faster than they would just by being in the environment. Another strategy that I think works really well in a 3-to-6 environment is the creation of a list of common words from their routine and environment. I've noticed like some materials in Montessori, they're usually in English, they come from either United States or England, and they have very specific vocabulary of things that we don't even know here in Spain, or things that are too difficult or they're not used that often. And when children are reading these words, they don't even know what they mean. And also I noticed that it was important for them, by the time they get to the stage where they need to work with the movable alphabet, it's important that they have at least a few words in their vocabulary that they will be able to write later using the movable alphabet or build with the movable alphabet. So I thought maybe I would create a list of key vocabulary for them, divided in categories. For example, I have a category for food, fruits and vegetables. I have another for tools or classroom objects, objects around the house, transportation, clothes, and so on. So each one of these categories will have some key vocabulary of things they're used to, that are typical here, that they see a lot here in their environment. And what we are trying to do now is to coordinate that with the infant community so they can also have one part of this vocabulary, and we expand as they get to children's house. So what do we do with this vocabulary? We use these words in all our language materials. So it can be oral language shelf, and we have things that go together, for example, or the odd one out, for example. So these materials, we try to create our own materials, including all of these keywords from the vocabulary list. So whenever they're working with any of these materials, they're internalizing and absorbing words of the vocabulary I want them to know that would be useful in the future. I also collected miniatures of these words from the vocabulary list, use them for beginning sounds. Our children really love working with these materials. They get a little drawer that has the sound, for example. So they bring the sandpaper letter and they trace the letter and they take one object out and say helicopter. And that also helps them develop this vocabulary that I want them to learn. And again, we overemphasize and overuse these words from the vocabulary list in everything. So you're telling a story, we use these words in the story. We're outside in the playground, we see something from the vocabulary list, we call them to see it. If we're doing oral language games, I Spy games, we always use these words as well. So it's kind of a strategy to help them have a list of vocabulary before they are ready to do reading and writing. Another strategy is adaptation of books. I've noticed that some books that are aimed to older children, 5 or 6-year-olds, for example, had vocabulary that was too difficult for my second language learners. So usually when I buy books that are aimed to younger children, because usually contains easier vocabulary that's easier for them to understand. And then one strategy that I use when I'm first introducing a book to the children is that I show them the pages, but instead of reading the book, I just retell the story using my own words. And obviously, I try to introduce some of the key vocabulary during the reading. Because I think it's just easier for them to understand the main idea of the story and get engaged with the book before I read the book and the whole text of the book. As maybe a second time I'm reading the same book, I'll read the text slowly, but I'll make pauses in the middle to clarify vocabulary. So, for example, in a book, I'm reading and then he touched the doorknob. So children don't know what a doorknob is. So I'll stop and I'll say, do you know what a doorknob is? And then maybe one child will volunteer to say it in Spanish, or I'll explain in English what the vocabulary is. And the next time we read the book again, they already have that vocabulary. And this is how they keep expanding their vocabulary in English. Also, I have the same books. We have a little library in our class. We have 5-6 books in our library, and we change them every month. And every time we change the books from our library, I also change them on the cassette player, the CD player that we have in the classroom, and we have the audio book of those stories. And if I can easily find them on the internet, on YouTube, but if I can't, then I'll just record it myself, and they can follow along with the book as they are reading. So another strategy is using humor and expressions with the children. Children love humor and they love laughing. Whenever we connect anything to humor, they're more inclined to repeating. So I have some expressions that I use all the time in the classroom, and it's really funny when they start using these expressions with their friends in contexts where I'm not around. So one expression that I use all the time in the classroom, if they start talking too fast or if they start going ahead of themselves, asking for things that haven't happened yet, I go, oh, hold your horses, hold your horses. And that's something that I hear them saying to each other all the time. So the other day, a child was in the swing and another child wanted to use the swing. And then they're like, oh, can I have it before you? And after me, it'll be somebody else. And then the other child was like, whoa, 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 hold your horses. And it was a child that was not even speaking English yet. So I think those things really help them want to use these expressions and want to use English in their daily routine. And then games that explore key vocabulary as well. I started a game with children this year that I thought really helped with developing the vocabulary for food, for example. That's one of our categories in the key vocabulary list. So they bring their lunch boxes in the morning and they have snack in the classroom. So every morning when I'm welcoming them at the door, they come to me with the box, and the game is I have to guess what's their snack that day. So sometimes I'll start with some absurd things like, oh, it's lasagna or flamenquing. But then I'll start using guessing what I really think they have, and they get really happy when they guess it right. But that as well helps them start absorbing food vocabulary. That's one of my goals with the key list vocabulary. I think anecdotes in English work really well with the children, apart from books. I heard this Montessori teacher that was telling about how she developed this character, and whenever she told a story, she would use this character that was her friend. And then children are so they get so excited about it, because whenever we tell a different episode, it's like, oh, I already know what happened to her yesterday. Now I want to find out what happened to her today. So in my case, I use my dog Cookie as a character. So all the parents in school already know Cookie, because children go home telling them all the stories that I told about Cookie. And obviously I try to add as much as the key vocabulary as possible to these anecdotes. And children just love it. And just I think one parent once told me that the child was telling him the story that I told them before, the day before. And the child was telling the story half in English and half in Spanish, because they couldn't really express themselves in Spanish, telling that a specific story. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Another strategy that really helps children speak more is what we call the show and tell bag. Each day, one child takes home the show and tell bag, and they bring it back the next day with an object inside. And then during the group meetings, they can show the object that they brought to their friends. It can be a photograph, or a craft, or something they found in nature, or an interesting object they have around the house. And they come to school the next day and they tell the other children about it. Some of them have been using a lot of English when they're expressing this, when they're telling about their object. We start using leveled readers in children's house when children have already started reading. So I've printed a big collection of leveled readers, and I have them in my classroom. So I created a little folder for each child, with an envelope inside with the sight words they're practicing, and also with one of the leveled readers that they're reading inside. So they get to take this book home every day, and they have to bring it back the next day so I can change the book. But first, either me or my assistant, we read the book with the child, we go over vocabulary, we review the sight words with a 3-period lesson, and then they take the books home. And the idea is that they read the book to their parents. But that was super interesting. And children, I noticed that even the younger children were so excited about these folders and taking books home. So I decided to create the same folder for children who are not yet reading, but instead of sending leveled readers, I will give them wordless books. So each day, either my assistant or I will sit down with the child and tell them the story based on the pictures, and they would be guessing what each character was doing and narrating the whole story. Those are usually 5-page long, so it doesn't take a long time for you to do that. But then it's really interesting because they get home, and the idea is that they tell their siblings and their parents the story. So inevitably, they will start using some of the vocabulary they learned in the book. And finally, I think it's important for children to bond with the guide and with the language. As I mentioned before, if children are not secure, if they are not really bonding with you, they will not want to use this language. So it's important that we spend time with them, even during like playtime or other moments of transition in the classroom, to ask them a little question about their day or make a connection about something they did the day before. And one thing that really helps in my class, I thank children when they use English to speak to me. So whenever somebody comes to me and says something in English, I say, oh, thank you very much for trying to speak English and talking to me. You know, my Spanish is not so good, so I really appreciate when you come and tell me in English. And I mean, the other children hear that, and they also want to try and speak English. And it's really cute when I see them coming to me and trying to talk to me in English. Rephrasing, this is not new. Everybody who ever worked in an international environment, bilingual environment, knows this strategy, but it's a strategy that really helps. That's rephrasing their sentences in an enthusiastic way, without correcting them, but like just as if you're listening to someone and just mirroring what they are saying. So if they come to me and say, que me viene a recoger mi abuela, I'll answer, oh, your grandma's coming to pick you up. Are you going to her house? That's so exciting. So that kind of thing gives them the direction. I mean, maybe not next time, but like in a few times they try to say the same thing, they'll have at least the vocabulary to say the same thing in English. And another strategy that I use sometimes, if I notice that the child is ready to speak English, because I've noticed that they've been using sentences in English already, but sometimes they speak Spanish. I pretend that I don't understand one part of what they're saying, but not in a rude way, not in a way to make the child feel bad, but I'll go like, oh, I just missed this last part. What was it again? And then sometimes the child will try to say again in Spanish, oh, I missed that. Maybe, my Spanish is really bad. Maybe try to say the same thing in English. Sometimes they'll say, oh, yeah, of course, and they will do it. And if they don't, it's okay. I'll understand it the next time. Or sometimes there will be, oh, I just don't know how to say this word in English. And I was like, maybe this word I can help you with. What's the word? And then they tell me the word, I give them translation in English, and they can say the whole sentence in English. So I think that really helps them getting into the habit of only using English when talking specifically, well, to me, or to my assistant, and to other teachers in the school. Well, those are the tips and strategies and adaptations that I had to share with you. I would like to thank Amy and the Bilingual Montessori Project very much for the opportunity of sharing them here with you. And I'll see you next time.